I stood there in the crowded living room, the air thick with the scent of lilies from Dad's funeral flowers. My brother, Mark, held up that crumpled letter, his voice steady as he read aloud words that weren't mine. Emily's been manipulating Dad for years, he said, his eyes scanning the relatives, landing on me like daggers. Whispers rippled through the room, my aunt gasping, cousins shifting uncomfortably, as he accused me of forging documents to steal the inheritance. My hands trembled, but I said nothing. Why didn't I defend myself right then? The question burned in my chest as the room turned against me. Would you have frozen like me in that moment? It started months earlier, but that day at the funeral aftermath felt like the end of everything. Dad had passed quietly in his sleep, leaving behind a modest estate he'd built from nothing, a house, some savings, and that old family ring he always wore. Mark and I were his only children, but we'd grown apart over the years. He lived across the country with his wife, Laura, in their flashy condo, while I stayed close, caring for Dad through his illness. I cooked his meals, drove him to appointments, listened to his stories late into the night. It wasn't about the money for me, it was about being there when no one else was. But Mark saw it differently. From the moment Dad got sick, subtle shifts appeared. Phone calls where he'd ask about Dad's finances, casual mentions of helping manage things. I brushed it off at first, family, right? Yet, there was that recurring chill in his voice, like he was tallying up assets instead of checking on our father. One evening, as I sorted Dad's papers in the dim kitchen light, I found an old envelope tucked away. It was yellowed, with Dad's handwriting on the front, for Emily. Inside was a note about the ring, how it symbolized loyalty, passed down through generations. I slipped it back, not thinking much of it then. But that envelope would come back to haunt us all. Tension simmered during Dad's final weeks. Mark visited once, staying just long enough to argue about medical bills. "You're spending too much on home care," he snapped at me in the hallway, his face inches from mine. Laura lingered in the background, her smile too perfect, too rehearsed. I noticed how she eyed the house, commenting on its potential value. Dad, weak but sharp, waved it off with a tired hand. "Emily's got it handled," he said softly. Mark's jaw tightened, but he left without another word. I still wonder if I should have confronted him then. Those small barbs, passive comments about my influence over Dad, felt like warnings. But I told myself it was grief talking. As Dad's condition worsened, the power imbalance became clear. Mark had the career, the money, the life that looked perfect on paper. I was the single daughter, working part-time to stay home with Dad, scraping by. He started emailing lawyers, questioning the will without telling me. I overheard Laura on a call one night during their visit, "We need to protect what's ours." Her words hung in the air like smoke. Suspicion crept in slowly. I'd find drawers slightly ajar after they left, papers shuffled. One day, the family ring was missing from Dad's nightstand. I searched everywhere, my heart pounding. Mark called later that week, casual as ever, "How's everything holding up?" I mentioned the ring, and he paused, just a beat too long. "Probably misplaced," he said. But I felt it then, that knot in my stomach. Was he testing me? Small humiliations piled up. At a family gathering before Dad passed, Laura accidentally spilled wine on my dress, laughing it off as clumsiness. Mark chimed in, "Emily's always been the clumsy one, remember?" Laughter followed, but it stung. I smiled through it, excusing myself to the bathroom where I stared at my reflection, wondering why I let it slide. Then came the affair whispers. Not mine, but hints about Dad's past that Mark started dropping. "You know, Emily, Dad had secrets too." He said it over coffee one morning, his eyes gleaming. I dismissed it, but it planted seeds of doubt. Did I really know my father? Or was Mark weaving something to undermine me? I thought I understood it all when Dad revised his will. He called me to his bedside, his voice frail, "Emily, you're getting the house and the savings." Mark gets the investments, he's better with money. It seemed fair, but Mark's reaction was cold fury when he found out. Dad's not thinking straight, he muttered. Laura nodded, her hand on his arm. I misinterpreted it as jealousy, not the start of something darker. Escalation hit after Dad's death. The funeral was somber, rain pattering on the cemetery tent. Mark stood tall, delivering a eulogy that painted him as the devoted son. I felt eyes on me, relatives murmuring about how I'd taken over. Back at the house for the reading, Mark arrived with a lawyer I'd never seen. There's an addendum, the lawyer announced, pulling out that letter, the one Mark had found. As he read it, accusations flew. I'd coerced Dad into changing the will, hidden assets, even suggested I'd forged signatures. The room erupted in hushed shock. My cousin avoided my gaze, my aunt shook her head. Public humiliation burned through me like fire. Financial stakes loomed, losing the house meant starting over at 45. Socially, I'd be the family pariah. Emotionally, it shattered the trust I'd clung to. But in that chaos, I clung to one thought, the envelope. Why had Mark chosen that letter? I replayed every interaction. His pauses, Laura smiles. A false clarity hit, maybe he was just greedy, lashing out. Yet deeper doubts nagged. Had I missed the signs? Weeks before, I'd confronted Laura privately. What's really going on? I asked in the kitchen, her back to me as she poured tea. She turned slowly, Mark's protecting the family legacy. Her words dripped with hidden meaning. I thought it was about the money then. But no, there was more. Suspicion grew during the probate meetings. Mark pushed for quick sales, his lawyer citing discrepancies. I found emails on Dad's old computer, ones Mark had sent, questioning Dad's mental state. Small lies layered, he claimed I'd isolated Dad, kept visitors away. Relatives started calling, probing gently. Is it true, Emily? One asked. I denied it, but the damage spread. Another false moment, I believed Laura was the instigator, whispering in Mark's ear. I even followed her once to a cafe, watching her meet someone, a private investigator? My heart raced. But it turned out to be a friend. I felt foolish, paranoid. Still, the humiliations escalated. Anonymous tips to the family about my motives, whispers at gatherings. Would you have confronted her directly? Stakes rose higher. Legally, Mark filed to contest the will, citing that forged letter as evidence. Emotionally, I unraveled, nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying Dad's last words, trust your instincts, Emily. Socially, invitations dried up, I was the outcast. Financially, lawyers' fees drained what little I had. Then, a breakthrough, or so I thought. I found the ring hidden in Mark's old room during a house clear-out. Tucked in a drawer, wrapped in a note, for safekeeping. Rage boiled, but I held back. This was proof, right? He was stealing mementos. Yet it felt too obvious. My assumptions shifted again, maybe it was sentimental, not sinister. The pressure cooker peaked at a family mediation. Mark laid out evidence, bank statements I'd never seen, twisted to show embezzlement. Laura sat smugly, her eyes flicking to the ring on her finger. Wait, Dad's ring? Humiliation crested as the mediator questioned me harshly. I stammered, defenses crumbling. In that moment, I thought I'd lost everything. But then, the twist unraveled it all. I'd known about the affair for months, not Dad's, but Mark's. Dad had confided in me during a lucid night, Mark's not faithful to Laura. She's known for years, but stays for the money. It reframed everything, their visits, her possessiveness. But the real reveal? That letter Mark read at the gathering wasn't forged by me. It was planted by Laura, to turn the family against Mark subtly. Wait, no, deeper still. I'd hired my own investigator quietly, after finding those emails. The forged documents? They were real, but altered by Mark himself to frame me. The ring on Laura's finger? She'd taken it, not for sentiment, but as leverage in their crumbling marriage. The affair was hers, with Mark's lawyer. They'd conspired to contest the will, split the inheritance, and leave Mark in the dust. But Mark discovered it, and in revenge, he staged the public humiliation to expose her indirectly through that letter, which detailed her manipulations. No, that's not quite it. Let's step back. The twist, I anticipated it all. Months ago, Dad and I had updated the will with a hidden clause, a trust that activated if foul play was suspected. That envelope I'd found? It contained proof of Mark's early financial meddling, which I'd photographed and sent to a safe deposit. When Mark presented his evidence, it triggered an audit. The lawyer he brought? Compromised by Laura's affair, but I'd tipped off authorities anonymously. In hindsight, every cold look, every passive comment, it all pointed to their mutual betrayal. Mark thought he was humiliating me, but he was unraveling his own web. The room's shock wasn't just at me, it was at the revelations that followed when the Real auditor stepped in. It felt earned, inevitable. I'd stayed silent, letting their motives surface. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, hit like to remind yourself you're not alone. And if this story resonates, subscribe for more tales of quiet justice. You won't want to miss what's next. In the end, the inheritance sorted itself. Mark lost his claim amid the fraud investigation, Laura fled with nothing. I kept the house, the savings, and the ring, now a symbol of hard-won clarity. I didn't lose my family that night. I just learned who was never really there. Self-worth came slowly, in quiet evenings alone, free from their shadows. Emotional detachment brought peace. True loyalty isn't blood, it's actions. Wait until you hear what happened next.